You're listening to the Guitar Heroes podcast.
And we are live! Episode 13. Lucky 13. Oh, my word.
Is it really?
Episode
Already?
13. Yes. Hello, Christopher Taylor.
Good evening, Mr. Phil Walker.
Yes. And good
How-
evening. Oh, go on, Chris. Sorry, I
was just
interrupted
going to say,
you then, didn't I?
I was just going to say, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm pickled pink. Yeah. No, tickled pink.
Pickled
No, actually,
pink.
I'm on the port again, so I am pickled pink, to be fair. Yeah.
He's happy because there's no acoustic guitars here tonight.
Oh,
so-
well, hang on a minute. We'll say hello to Lee Williams.
Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening.
And,
Hope you're well.
I'm going to start this podcast. I'll tell everybody what it's about in a minute, but I want to start this podcast
With the
by
lick of
cueing-
doom. Here we go. You ready? No, I'm joking.
As long as it's not an acoustic. No, you're all right. So can someone just cue my rant music because I feel like
Already?
I'm sorry, guys. Sorry,
Phil,
but
I absolutely loved the Q Phil's rant last week, Lee. That was spot on. So go on, I'm going to leave
Should we
this
go
with
again?
you.
Should we go
go on, Lee. Cue
Here we
me.
go. Ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time to cue the music.
Phil's rant. Oh dear. Yeah, this is a rant, but this is a bit of it's a rant directed at myself. Okay. I'm gonna rant at myself because I feel that after last week's acoustic episode, I'm gonna retract at least 10% of what I was saying about acoustic guitars.
10%.
At least 10%.
He's backpedaling. He's backpedaling.
It could be
Still
10 to 15%.
He still agrees they're boring. But
No,
you
it
know
could be
what
10 to
what's happened here,
15%.
Chris?
Go on.
He's listened to the podcast and realised what a grump he sounded. And I had to sit through that while I was piecing it together time and time again. I was thinking...
But
Not-
you know,
not-
this,
not
this,
at all.
This went back as far as the episode prior to that as well. I don't know if you heard it.
No,
He's going,
no,
oh, this is
no.
boring. I'm missing my wildlife. And
Oh, maybe that's why I'm in a good mood tonight because there's no winter watch on tonight, so I'm okay being it. So it's fine. No, but I need to retract at least 10 to 15% of what I said about acoustic guitars, and it's something that happened to me this morning actually.
Okay, go on then.
Every morning I get up quite early, and there's a certain time of day when I look at YouTube. Usually when I'm performing some ablutions or some sort or other after I've fed all the animals
Say no
in the
more.
house. Yeah, say no more.
Yeah.
But something came up on YouTube as I was sat there. I'll give it away now. As I was sat there, as I was there, and it was Lindsey Buckingham solo. And actually, no, I'll
Okay.
backpedal a bit. It was a rig rundown, a Premier Guitar rig rundown that came up, and it was all about Lindsey Buckingham's gear and guitars and the hundreds of acoustic guitars that he takes on the road. I'm not going to drag this out too long. And I thought, oh, this looks interesting, and all his gear. And then I went on and had a look at what he's actually, why that gear was set up. He was doing a solo thing, a live thing. He blew me away, man. I tell you what, he was the thing that really got me. He was doing Big Love, the song Big Love, on a
classic.
Chet Atkins Gibson nylon strung, and he just ripped that song apart. Blew me away. So yeah, that's why
Oh,
I'm
wow.
retracting some of my acoustic guitarness on that, because I'd never heard him do that before acoustically, and it was like, oh wow. So I went and downloaded the whole concert. So there you go, guys. You
Out of
could be
interest, was it
converting me.
the... Because we were discussing that a couple of weeks ago, weren't we, Chris? With
it was
the dance.
the dance, the album, the live concert, the dance. Is that right? Or
Was that the one, Phil, where he's sort of in the light on his own and he's doing the...
Yes.
He's got like a slap back delay and...
Yeah,
It's,
eventually, about halfway through the concert, a band joins him on stage, but it's still really
Oh,
quite
okay.
acoustical.
so
and-
this is a solo thing. This is like his
yes,
show, is it?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all
It
right.
must be recent-ish because he's quite grey on it, so it must be
Okay.
a recent-ish type of thing. But yeah, it just blew me away. So anyway, I just wanted to just say that to anybody who's
Well,
like
there we
hating me
go.
for acoustic guitars. Not that I really care, but I just wanted to say that Lindsey Buckingham, you're awesome. It's brilliant.
I think actually probably what happened was Jay listened to the podcast and she said, Phil...
No,
Come
no,
on
no.
now.
Well, she started
Come on
listening
now.
to it, but when you said about acoustics, she fell asleep. I had to keep nudging her. No, not at all. Right. Anyway, so today's podcast is I want to talk about disastrous or funny gigs because I've been doing this job now for 30 some years. Okay, and you guys, this is pretty much all you've ever done. So I'm pretty sure we've got some funny stories. and some funny things that have happened to us on gigs and shows. I know I've got a list of things here. I could choose. I could be here for about 5 hours talking about my disastrous things. But yeah, has anybody got anything that springs to mind? Chris, what's...
Well, obviously I have. I can't help but feel this is somewhat of just a big build-up towards you know what.
We'll save that for the end, shall we?
Yeah. All right, we'll come to that in a bit.
Chris, does anything spring to mind to you straight off that you just think, I wish the stage had just swallowed me up?
Yeah, there was there's been a few moments, so I've kind of made a few mental notes. I haven't written anything down, but there was one gig we did. It was a few years ago. It was a wedding gig in, I'm trying to think where it is, in Braintree in Essex. The place was lovely. It was on a farm, and the wedding was all at home, and it was a lovely day actually to begin with. But as the day progressed, like the heavens opened and like the rain that came down was insane. We were in a marquee and had like a stage that was about 10 centimeters high. And throughout the day, you could just see the water rising to the side of it. And like that was the beginning of it. And what they had done where the marquee was alongside that was they created it was like a crop field, but they've made like a driveway out of it so all the cars can go and park on the field. But cars have been, with the rain coming down and the mud getting wet, they started chewing up all the mud and cars were getting stuck. And we got to like 1 o'clock in the morning and they said, you realise you're not going home, don't you? And our van was stuck there. And the bass player, Dan, I said to him, drive on the crop field, don't go onto the mud, because if that van slips, we're going to be stuck here for hours. And he decided to go 2 wheels onto the crop field, the other 2 onto the mud. And yeah, the van got stuck, as you would guess. And
Ford Transits don't have diff lock, do they?
No, but we burnt the clutch out on that as well, trying to get it out. The worst thing was they actually shut everything down. They had the portaloos outside. They locked all of that. They turned all the lights off, and they all went back into their house. And we were stranded in this market. It was freezing cold. It was winter time as well. And we were there till about 11 a.m. waiting for a recovery van to come and get us. They sent one out. It was like a Land Rover thing, but that was just sliding all over the place. But yeah, that was one of the worst gigs, actually. We were up for like 36
Didn't you
hours.
end up having to try and like spend the night in the marquee or something, and you were still there? The bride and groom came out of the place where they'd been staying at 9 o'clock the next morning and found you in the marquee, shivering.
Yeah, it was literally the worst night of my life. It was so cold. And Chrissy doesn't do the cold.
Well, you
very
wait till we go back on the road, Chris.
I'm going to say he's not worked with us
You're
yet, has
bunking
he?
with me.
No, but we had a gig the next day, and we had to be there by like I think by midday or something. Then we didn't get out of this place till 11. We were calling them saying we're going to be a little bit late, and they were like, they were absolutely fine by the time we got there. We did the gig and everything. Afterwards, they didn't want to pay us because we were late, and it was just everything kind of rolled into each other, and it was just we hadn't slept at this point, maybe going on 2 days or something. It was we had a travel lodge planned for that evening on the way to the gig.
Wow.
We were going to stop over, grab a nice breakfast, and no, none of that.
Oh, then again, travel lodge on marquee. I think you probably had the better option, to be honest.
They are a
I
bit
bet
hit
in
and
that
miss,
moment
aren't
you
they?
were thinking, what are we doing? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Bloody guitars. Why didn't I just get a nice
Office
warm,
job or something.
dry job?
Yeah.
Working in travel lodge.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a pretty epic story, but at least you weren't on stage. At least it wasn't like a stage disaster. It sounds like a nightmare, but you didn't have to face any embarrassment or anything.
No,
in front
the
of...
gig itself was actually quite good. We got
Mm.
fed and stuff there during the day, but yeah, it was an okay gig, and but yeah, it was just afterwards. It was just yeah.
What about you, Lee? What? I mean, it wasn't embarrassing, that story.
It was more of a disastrous
inconvenient. Yeah, it's rather an inconvenient gig, was that? But Lee,
Yeah.
anything you can
Well,
think
yeah. Funnily enough, yeah. Yeah, there is. Well, I've got a few things that came to mind, actually, from various stages in my career or life, whatever. Maybe I'll save the big kahuna to the end, but taking it way back, I remember one of the earliest experiences I had on stage where it just went horribly wrong. And musicians, performers, most of us will probably know that situation. It's just like the worst feeling because you have to think on your feet and you have to deal with it. this was taking it back to when it wasn't actually musical. Well, it was like musical theatre. I can't remember how old I was, but I won't say what the play was because you guys will rip it out of me. But I was the lead role in this play. And,
Annie.
Damn, you've got it. You've got it. And my wig caught fire. No, it was just about to come on for quite a big scene, and I was hanging backstage in pitch black and sort of being ushered. Right, you're up, here we go. Jumped off a little thing that I was sat on and put a nail straight through my foot.
Oh,
Literally. Well, actually, it wasn't even a nail. It was a screw, and it was the screw head.
Oh.
It was on a broom, and it hadn't been screwed all the way in, and it was protruding from the broom head by a few centimeters, and that just went straight into the
man,
bottom
we
of
asked
my
for
bare
disastrous
foot.
stories, not disgusting stories.
I don't want to be sick now, Lee.
It was literally. I mean, at the time, it was a big deal. There's 100 people out there waiting to see the second half of this play, and I had to go on. I had to literally go straight on and do a scene where I had to sing. And
What song did you sing, Lee?
I can't tell you that. I was sat in a chair for this particular song, and had my one foot up, sort of on my knee. So I'm looking out, trying to do the performance, but also kind of glancing down at the pool of blood that's trickling down my foot. And it was like, get the scene done, and then straight off to whatever first aid kit there was in the building, and essentially just bandaged and plastered the foot up, and then came back on with a large boot for the rest of the play. And then after it, I think I might have gone to the hospital the next morning just to see if it needed stitches, and it turns out it was all right. It was made more dramatic because of the situation. It was like, 10 seconds from going on stage, I've just trodden a nail.
Oh my God, Oliver's. He needs his understudy.
Were you there?
Did I guess it?
Were you
there?
It was
Oliver,
Billy
wasn't
Elliot.
it?
Billy Elliot, wasn't it?
Right, move on.
Well, I've got loads of funny and disastrous things. I sort of cut my teeth in this business doing a lot of the northern clubs. I think I did my first gig at 11 in a working men's club, so I had quite a hard upbringing in with gigs and things like that. It was entertain me or bugger off type thing. It was quite harsh all those years ago. And I remember we used to have to take our own lighting rigs and big PAs and things like that. And there was no sort of like a 3,000 watt rig that fits in the boot of your car back then. And like a 3,000 watt rig, you used to have to get an snap-on Mercedes truck to put it in. It was big stuff. I remember this one, and they always made you feel really good, about being in the place. It's almost like you're an inconvenience. Not everywhere. Some places are great, but you do get some that you feel like an inconvenience. I remember, you're carrying the gear through, and they've got this 150-year-old doorman there. And this one night we were playing in Leeds. I can't remember which gig it was, but it was definitely Leeds. And we started carrying all the PA through and all the amp racks and the flight cases. And the guy goes, "Whoa, bloody hell!" He says, "They'll be using some electric tonight." And we're like, "Oh God, here we go! It's one of those, isn't it?" And anyway, we got to the lights and we started bringing the lighting rig in. And he said, "Oh, well, at least you've brought your own lights. That'll save us something." Like, oh God. Yeah, brilliant. But we used to get all sorts of we used to get all sorts of problems that we had because there was no LED lighting back then. It was all the big sort of 500-600 watt par cans, and they used to really juice the buildings. They really didn't. There's so many times you go on for your first song, you can't 1, 2, 3, poof, power's gone. As soon as the lighting rig comes on, and you take the whole club out, and there's all sorts of things like that. That's like just thank God for LED lighting and Class D power amps nowadays, because they don't really get that sort of problem anymore.
Well, those par cans get really hot as well, don't they?
Oh, I tell you what, we
You
there were
sweat
no fat
buckets at
club
gigs.
singers back then.
No.
You used to sweat like you wouldn't believe. It was we get if you ever get people destroying the gig for you as well. Because I remember it was actually Moonfleet Manor. Was this? We were doing a New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
and I think it was a three-piece band, and we got the monitors before in-ear monitors. We got all our monitors at the front, and you kind of block yourself in with some functions, don't you? Because especially New
Most
Year's
of the
Eve,
time.
you think, I'll do everything I can to keep as far away from the audience as you can. And I had this 5-way, like the stag guitar racks that opens up, and you can line 5 guitars up in it. And as the night got further on and people are getting more juiced up, and
they're getting closer to you as well.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and this idiot realised he wanted to get on stage, and he started climbing over my guitar rack, and like he'd put his foot up on the guitar rack, and he's trying to climb over my guitars. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, want to sing? And I just like got him by the forehead and just pushed him off. And I was like, what do? You can trash like 3-4 grand's worth of guitars I've got sitting in there, or you won't remember this in an hour's time anyway. So
that was always one of my fears at like wedding gigs, like functions and things. Like people just get too close, and the amount of times I've had my microphone like smack me in the mouth.
Yeah.
So we end up
weddings are the worst.
Oh, man.
I think some of the behaviour I've seen, and ironically, it's usually like the sort of quote nicer weddings are the ones that actually end up really raucous. And tell you what, military ones. I don't know if you've. Chris, we've all probably done a few like officers' mess and stuff like that. Man, those guys. I mean, I kind of get it. It's a high pressure job, and when they let the hair down, they really go for it. But whoa, we've been in a few that have just turned into like Royal Rumble.
They've been mental, some of them. But at the same time, they have the officers there, don't they? They come in and check up on the squaddies and stuff, and they often keep them intact. So like if anything's going wrong, that they are often quite respectful at times. But
I think what it was, that one that we did, it was an officer's mess, so they were all officers, and I think it was the descent from where it started to where it ended that was the most impressive. If you've been in some sort of rowdy bar that you wouldn't think anything of it, but this night started of them all in the sort of like full on glad rags, the gentry. They've got the big silver swords and the sashes, and they're all marching about with brass bells and saluting, and it was like proper posh stuff at a huge like silver platter dinner. And then 4 hours later, they literally had like, things tied around their head. They were doing the knee slides. They were playing beer pong. There was tables and chairs upside down. I think I remember some guy. It was actually we kind of got snowed in a little bit there, and they opened these huge sash windows and were just like launching themselves head first out the window into the snow. It was crazy, and we were doing exactly that, burying us, building a barrier to block ourselves in, and just hoping we got through the final set.
Yeah, we did. We did a military gig, and it was sort of set to a theme of like the Spartans. Everyone was dressed up. They had hay everywhere, and like they had chickens in the venue.
Oh wow!
It was like an old manor house, and they had chickens, and there were just people just chasing the chickens round, like completely off their face. And there was they had a hog roast as well, but they had the pig's head there as well. And we took the end of night photo, and the bass player was like sat next to me, but the one of the guys had got the pig's head and literally put it on top of him. He didn't even know.
Oh, gee.
And like, but it was they're often mental, but they are a lot of fun. I quite.
Oh, they're great.
They are good.
But weddings in general, I think weddings are just you just get such a cross section of society, and it's quite a long day for everyone, isn't it? So you get to see all these people that, again, it's that descent of they start the day, dressed to the nines, looking their best, and all prim and proper. When it gets to the midnight shift, it's just carnage.
I tell you what, a good wedding start. A good start to a wedding is when you turn up to the venue. The bride comes and says, "Oh yeah, I'll come and talk to you later. I'm just going to go and do a few lines."
Oh no!
And you're like,
oh dear,
oh god, this is.
And she doesn't mean I've been a very naughty girl 1,000 times.
No, and what are you reciting for us?
And then she's late for her first dance. She comes out, and then she just runs up to Mike, who's on drums, and just goes, "Yeah," throws her arms up in the air, and then just throws up red wine all over her dress, and then goes, "Yeah," and we're just like.
Wow.
Oh God, we're gonna get out of here as soon as we can.
I know one of the one of the biggest problems that bands have to. I'm lucky. I've not done too many functioning wedding gigs. I'm lucky.
Hang on. Sorry, Phil. Just stop you there.
Yeah.
Chris, what was that I just saw?
I'm drinking a green tea, my man.
Oh, Chris, come on. You know the drill.
I'm gonna.
You know the
we're
drill
we're
by
gonna have to
now.
You know
cut
me,
this
I like to live
podcast
on
short
the
because
wild
my
side.
bottle's empty.
I was going to say we're going to have to drink twice as much to compensate here, Phil.
Yeah. Oh, dear, I should have started
Anyway,
at one
sorry.
instead of three. Yeah.
You were
So
saying?
yeah. So agents, like I've been lucky not to do too many wedding gigs and what have you, but I've always sort of gone more on the rockier side in bands, and me and Jay had a band. It was quite a rocky thing, and the agent sent us to this really posh. I think it was somewhere Stroud Way, I think it was, Gloucester, something like that. And it was a really posh manor house type place, and they showed us this like ballroom, and it was gorgeous. And she said, "We don't want you on stage though. We want to put you in the middle of the room where the dance floor is." And we were like, "There's a really big stage there. Why would you want to do that?" And she says, "Well, it's just you're more amongst it then." And we're thinking, "Oh right, it could be a good night, could this then? Really good." Anyway, we get set up and everything and sound checked, and then we go off and then come back in about half an hour before we're due on stage, and we looked around and the average age was about 80, and we're going, "Oh my God, we're doing like White Snake stuff," and we were like, "Oh no." So anyway, we thought, right, okay, we were going to start off by being quiet, and all the kit's mic'd up and everything like that. So first thing we'll do, we'll take the kit out of the PA because we know this is going to go. And so we went on with the first song, and I don't think we got to the chorus before, like, there's people coming up, like, with fingers in their ears and all this time. We're going,
God.
oh no, I mean, I didn't have a guitar amp. I was DIing, so we had a lot of control over it, and this just went on, and we were like, I think by the fourth song in, I was livid. I was absolutely livid, and this bloke came up to me, and I'd lost it at this point. This bloke came up to me, and he said, "Young man, if you do not turn this awful racket off, I will go and unplug all of your equipment." And I went, "You touch that, mate, you'll be wearing that plug." And Jay just went, "Oh, that's it, we're done, we're out." Anyway, the guy went and complained, obviously. And the manager came up to me and he said, "I've got to look like I'm telling you off, but thank you for that. That bloke comes here every week. We were waiting for somebody to just give him a mouthful." He said, "But make it look like I've told you off, would you?"
There's nothing worse, is there? Nothing worse.
But that's the
than that.
agent's fault, sending you to the wrong venue.
And it's usually getting those comments off people that they're not the people that have booked you, or they're not the people that are paying you on the night. That's what I always say when I get those. I'm like, well, until the person that's actually paying me to be here comes up and tells me to change what I'm doing, like, it's particularly with weddings, if you get guests that are just coming up and just making requests and do this, do that, I go, well, it's the bride and groom's day. Go and take it up with them, and oh man, or you get the guy, "Right, son, I once met Jimi Hendrix in a pub," and I think, here we go. Anyway, I'm not gonna. Let's not. It's Phil. Will you do the rant? So I'm not gonna go there.
I remember doing. Do you remember the film The Full Monty?
Yes.
You remember that?
Hang about. Where's this going?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't get the part.
You can leave your hat.
Yeah, the hat was too small.
Top hat.
Yeah. So I'd been on holiday I think I'd been to Florida, and we got back, and I think we had a day off, and then we were playing at this place. And I really enjoyed it in America. It was brilliant. Loved my time there. It was fantastic, and I didn't want to be in England. It was, we came back and it was raining and grey, and we had to go to I don't know, Misery Thorpe Working Men's Club or wherever. We went to this place, and I didn't want to be there. I had an attitude, that I just didn't want to be there. And this guy, first thing he said, he came up to me, we were loading the gear, and he goes, "Huh, you know where you are, lad?" I went, No. He says, "Yeah." He said, "Full Monty here." Yeah, sharing stage with royalty here, And I went, and I just turned around to him. I went, "I'll give a toss, mate. I was shaking Mickey Mouse's hand yesterday." Which actually did shake Mickey Mouse's hand. Yeah, that was a
there's a
highlight
claim
of
to
my
fame,
career.
isn't
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, we're building up. We're building up to it. Chris, do you want to throw a Chris's corner in before I get to it? Because again, I feel like Phil's just put this episode on so that we can get to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do one. I got a little something.
You got a Chris's corner. All
It's
right.
only a little something, but let's do it.
We've heard.
Phil, do you want to cue the music?
Cue the music.
Okay, so a tip for all guitar players out there: whenever you're traveling with an amp, long distance, if it's going on a ferry or a plane or anything, that when you've put bubble wrap to protect your valves, make sure you remove them before you do the gig.
Top tip.
Yeah, just because, you could turn around and potentially see some flames coming out your amp and some heavy smoke. And
So how did you hear about that, Chris? How did you come to that top tip?
well, I was the one who experienced such a thing.
It was
and,
your amp, wasn't it?
It was my amp. It was my amp. I had a Blues Junior, and I thought I'd put bubble wraps around the valves just to protect them so they don't. I didn't have the money to buy any spare valves, so I was like, well, I've got to protect them. Bubble wrap was like £1. But yeah, you're about an hour into the gig, and then you just like, oh, can anyone else smell that? It stinks. It's like some heavy burning. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There we go. We've all learned something.
Oh,
All right.
dear.
Well, let's get to it then. The by far and away my biggest disaster that I've ever had on stage was last year with the story of Guitar Heroes. Were you there that night, Chris?
No,
Were you with us then?
No, the reason why this happened is because I left prior to that show.
You did, didn't you? Yes.
Up to that,
Yeah,
I
so
held your hand through everything. I brought you guitar straps. I tuned your guitars.
Yeah.
You see, I'm laughing now. I think I was crying at the time, wasn't I?
I think we both were. Yeah, so it was the hometown show, wasn't it? It was our Weymouth show.
Yeah.
Last year, 2020. Was it? No, 2020. No.
20. Yeah, it
19.
was. It was January 2020.
Oh, this COVID situation's completely messed up my
yeah.
calendar. I've got no idea where we are.
2020 feels about 3 years
Yeah.
ago, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So, you guys have warned me that you always get a bit nervous about the Weymouth gig because it's a hometown show. Very fortunately, it's very often a sellout show, and obviously there's a lot of friends and family in the audience. So, in previous years, you've had a couple of little minor things, just string breakages and stuff like that happened, but you always had that slight sense of anticipation about the hometown gig.
Mm.
Anyway, the show went great, fantastic. We made it through 2+ hours of music, and just couldn't be happier with the night until the moment we walked off stage. So we did the bow, we did the wave. Thank you, everybody. Round of applause, and see you later. Turned to head into the wing, and I didn't actually realise anything had happened until it had happened. It was too late. So where I'm positioned on stage, there's a large lighting tripod with a moving head. Very expensive light. And as I walked into the wing, my foot caught one of the legs of the tripod and just knocked it off kilter, just knocked it off balance, but not in a tremendous kind of like gave it a kick and it went flying, like knocked it off balance to the point where it must have hung in kind of just pendulum for a moment. So I actually made it into the wing to turn round to see the stage guy just look with horror as this thing seemed to fall in slow motion, came crashing down, brought some of the guitars which are on the staging rack down with it, literally landed like perfectly on my pedal board, on the helix and everything, and it was just like, oh my God. I mean, thankfully, I think half the auditorium had sort of left, and the other people that were in there had their backs to the stage and were walking out, but people did turn round and people were like, what's that? And it kind of was dramatic.
To be honest,
I
I heard such a thud. I didn't actually cotton on what had happened because I was the last one off stage, and I heard a thud, and I was going to actually give you a bit of a bollocking for bringing your wallet on stage, Lee. I thought you might have dropped it as you were walking off, you know.
But no, I sort of thought, have we got away with it? Because I thought it was right at the end of the show. It kind of had an essence of that, you know, like the Who, the big bang, crash, explosion at the end of the night. And I think some people just thought it was part of the sound playing in the theatre, all the music's going, and it's like this big thing. But it was, oh man, what and what made it worse as well is we ran out the front. We were going to do a meet and greet, which we always did at the end of the night. So had no time to really sort of tend to it. Just had to leave it. We were just in the wing, looking with horror, kind of shocked, speechless, like what's just happened. Can't think about it now. Gotta go. Getting ushered down to the front, and then got to spend half an hour, signing programs and chatting to people, just thinking, oh my God. And I think, Phil, you're just going, just keep smiling, smile and wave.
Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave.
Oh man, what a feeling. I mean, I'm just so grateful that it happened when it did. Like, I obviously wouldn't want it to happen at all, but thank God it happened right at the end of the night when the show was done. I mean, had it happened mid-show, it would have just been catastrophic.
Yeah, it'd probably halted us, wouldn't it? Would have probably.
I think just a little bit, and more importantly, like it could have seriously injured one
of the
us.
guitars. Yeah, you're right.
One of the guitars, any of us that happened to be in the path as it came crashing down. Did the light survive? I know we got a replacement.
We had to get a replacement. We couldn't get it sorted in time, but it's been repaired. Yeah, it's got a big crack on it. On the base, there's a big crack, but it's all been repaired. It does work.
Right on that. Get a Sharpie. Lee was here.
yeah. It's a spare. It's a spare now. Is that so?
Oh man, but yeah, it just had to happen, didn't it? It was just horrendous. What a feeling, and to have some of they were, I think, mainly my guitars that went over as well, and my pedal board. I was just like, oh man.
Well,
this is.
I tell you what, you're not the only one that type of thing's happened. I think I've actually said this on this podcast before. And I'm sure I have. But one of my most embarrassing moments was I was in Germany, and there was 2,000-3,000 people in this place, and it was a country festival, and there's TV cameras there. And everyone's really hyped up in the band, and it was like, yeah, and let's really go for this. It was just a great atmosphere in the place. And I opened the show by playing like a rock type thing on mandolin. So I'm there going for it, and the crowd's really warming to it. And the halfway through the song, there's like a drum break, and just as he starts going into the drum fill, dickhead here decides to jump on the drum riser, okay? Except the crew hadn't taped the cables down, had they, running across the back of the stage?
Oh, no.
So I went to run up, my foot got caught, I didn't make it to the drum riser, right? I landed face down on top of my amp. So imagine this, I've got a mandolin around my neck, and I landed face down, and I had a PV Classic at the time. I knocked that clean off the top of the flight case. That bounced off somewhere. I'm face down then. My leg is, and I've actually found a photo the other day of the bruise, and my leg is black. The thigh, the whole part is just black and purple.
Ouch.
I don't know how I got through the gig, to be honest, to pain. It was adrenaline. But one of the funniest things about it, I mean, all it was my arse was just stuck up in the air on top of this flight case, And the funny thing was, I just turned round to my left, where the monitor engineer was, thinking, oh, there's going to be some crew coming over soon to help me up, if anything. But no, the monitor guy is there with his headphones, wondering where the guitar's gone out of the mix. Never mind that. And I just
never mind that. Where's the guitar player gone?
I got up all dazed, and Jay was playing piano at the side, and she got this guy, and the guy went, oh, like that, and ran over, put my amp back on the top of the flight case, which was still working, which was amazing. And and all this happened in the space of the drum break, and I managed to play. When I went out to play my mandolin, it was like, it sounded awful. That, like I said, that's somebody that somewhere there's some footage of that somewhere, and I hope it never comes to light.
Actually, that's just reminded me, Chris. Didn't you have an interesting experience with your beloved PRS Custom 24?
I was anything as good as that, Phil. But it's
yours was more expensive.
I was going to say more expensive though.
let me just get my thoughts together on that. What happened? It was
It got smashed to pieces.
It did. I was at I was at a wedding gig, stone floor. What was it? Yeah, my PRS was at the front, so I went behind to grab my Strat, and the strap on that caught the headstock of the PRS. And as I just tugged on the Strat, the PRS didn't just fall like, you know, slowly or anything. It just went. It's a big crack. It happened so fast, and I just
Was it forward? It went
went
like
forward,
face down.
headstock straight onto the floor. So the tuning pegs, because they stick out and hit that floor with so much force. I just froze, man. I couldn't even look. And then I picked it up and I was like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And it wasn't only until a couple of days later I was doing a guitar lesson. I was tuning up the guitar, and then I just felt all these bits of wood just fall into my hand and onto the floor. And then,
that's somehow worse than you realise.
It is, because I thought it was fine. I was like,
broken.
I got away with that. And as I turned the guitar around, like just to have a look, I was like, oh god, one of the tuners is hanging. But I took it to Robin at Absolute, who did a sterling job. Sorted that right out. But I
think luckily for you, you had all the pieces, didn't you?
No, he had to fill everything in with glue or something,
right.
or he found some like wood sawdust or something. Just I don't know what he did. But
You do realise, Chris, that if Lee had been working at Absolute at the time, there's no way that guitar would have made it, and you would have had a new PRS that day.
Yeah,
because
Well, I
Lee and
sold him
Robin
that
would have
very
got
guitar.
together. Yeah, they'd have got together, going, "No, tell him it's had it. Tell him it's had it." Oh, look at this! We've got this new one's just come in, Chris.
yeah.
Nah, it was knackered in the first place. That's why I sold it to him.
Yeah, it had a bit of a headstock problem. Yeah,
It was a fake. It was a fake.
Headstock syndrome. Yeah.
Well, it was a nice guitar. It was a really nice guitar.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, there's been a few like disastrous stories on here, but I'm gonna kind of, because we're getting close to the end now, but I'm gonna tell you about a funny story that happened on stage.
Okay.
Because when you get the giggles on stage, or well, anywhere, and it's really
you can't control it, can you?
You can't control it. No. Well, it built up to that. Did this? So I'm not going to mention any names, bands, or anything like that. But we're playing in this packed out theatre, and the end song was an instrumental. I wasn't playing it; I was just in the backing band. And the guitar player was there. It'd been a really, really good gig, and it came to the last few notes, and it was like a gospel type song that we finished on, and it was played on slide, and the last few notes went, "Da, da, da," and there was always a pause, and just in that pause, from the other side of the stage came. The whole front, the whole like 3 front rows just fell about laughing. The band lost it, right? And yeah,
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. It was just. Every
The
time
timing,
we did that
man.
song after that, no one could look at each other. We just had to close our eyes and hope that didn't, that mouse didn't come on stage again. But oh god, talk about dear, yeah, it was we just lost it, and obviously the person who was doing the solo was out in the audience at the time playing it, so they never heard it. It was only,
I thought you meant the wind. So
no, so they never heard it, so there's just no idea why the theatre at the front of the theatre erupted and the band were crying on stage. You just got to picture it again. The
if only that had happened towards the start of the gig, that would have set such a.
That would have
That's
been more
amazing.
disastrous than bringing a lighting gantry down. I'll tell you what, it would. We wouldn't have been able to carry on.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there we go. That was an interesting little. Yeah.
Have you guys ever? I was going to say, have you guys ever had to do a gig with cut fingers?
You've not played in the guitar show yet, Chris?
Well,
yes, I have. I remember when I first got my bass, actually, and I went just full on into practicing bass and rehearsing and stuff, and I found out that I had very soft, weedy little guitar fingers. I thought they were quite tough, and I thought, I've been playing guitar for years. This will be fine. man, they shredded my fingers, these bass strings, and then jumping back to guitar at the gig that I was getting paid for, not the bass practice in my bedroom at home. It was, shredded fingers and blood on the neck, and
Actually, you say that
power through.
When we recorded the last Guitar Show CD that we did, the day before we went into the studio, I cut one of my fingers on my left hand, right on the end. I don't know if you remember. I was.
I think I do. Yeah.
I was just filling the cut with super glue with Loctite, and I was filing all the excess glue off. And we were doing Country Boy, and that's one of those songs you don't want to do too many takes on it, because the first one's always the best one. And we're going through this first one, and I can see this cut opening up as I'm playing it, and I'm going, no, just let's get to the end. Let's get to the end. Luckily, we did. And then afterwards, I was like, we've got any more super glue?
No, this is exactly what happened to me. Well, I was at the start of the gig in the morning, before I left for the gig, I was cutting myself up some sandwiches, and with a bread knife, I sliced my middle finger right on the tip where your string makes contact. And like yourself, I was filling it with super glue. I heard this was quite a good trick. And I tried like some plasters, like, you get that skin graft type plasters. That didn't work. So I was using the super glue, and at the gig, it opened up, and there's blood just pouring over my fretboard. And the worst bit is when that blood starts to dry, and you're still playing on it, and that friction.
Sticky.
Yeah. And then you got another 2 gigs to follow, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I tell you what, first world problems there, boys. It really is, isn't it?
I'll take that over COVID any day, man.
when you got to play with cold fingers, I bet we've done some have you done some outdoor gigs? I remember doing this open air festival thing in the winter, and it was freezing. It was absolutely bitter. You know when your hands are like blue, and you
can't move them. I did a New Year's Eve gig. It was literally -degrees in Weymouth on I think Brewers Quay. It was so cold. I was literally wearing like a pair of tracksuit bottoms underneath my jeans. And there was points in the gig I was trying to talk to the drummer, and
for once you had 2 pairs of trousers.
I had 2 pairs of trousers,
got none on.
Normally none. But I remember dribbling. I couldn't talk properly. My face was so cold
from your mouth.
Yeah,
he had 2 pairs of trousers on. It was warm.
Right, guys, I've got a question here that's been sent in by a listener. A really, really great question that I received from a guy called Jamie on Instagram today. He's loving the podcast, and he says it's a great listen if you're a novice like me and looking for some tips. And he had a question, and it goes like this. So I thought I'd just, as it was today, I'd put it to us live on air. For a beginner like me, obviously getting technique right is likely more important to achieving a better sound. But for guitarists like yourselves who do it professionally, and for the players that you echo on the stage, do you think that technique or tone contributes more to the player's signature sound, or do you think it's a combination that includes both factors? And then he goes on to say, I was thinking about people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, who has a very instantly recognizable touch and technique. But then you've got players like David Gilmour, who is maybe has more recognizable tone. And I thought that was interesting, because I think, I don't know, I'll let you guys answer first, and then I'll tell you what I think.
I think tone is one of the most important things as a guitar player, having a good sound. Regardless of how good you are as a player, if you have a good sound, I think that's going to translate to the listener a lot stronger. And in terms of technique, I've always approached it like, when I'm learning things, I'll work on a technique that's required to be able to play that certain thing. That's how I've always done things, and I've always focused on sound, and just like I think for me I think tone outweighs technique just a bit.
Okay, Phil.
Kind of. We're gonna have our first disagreement here, Chris. I disagree a little bit with that. I mean, I kind of play the majority of the people in the show, so I tend to find getting the style right gets you most of the way there. So I'd say technique can do that, because I mean, look at David Gilmour. He can sound, or Steve Vai, or any of them really. They can sound exactly the same, no matter what rig they're playing through. No matter, I've seen Eric Clapton play in the Royal Albert Hall with just one little amp, and yet I've seen him play with his full Soldano rig, and he still sounds like Eric Clapton. The rig and the sound isn't too much of a thing. I think it comes from your fingers. I think.
But there is a point where it does blend to each other, because in order to get a certain sound, you have to play with a certain technique or a certain pick attack. There is a combining factor.
Well, it's quite nice that you've both gone on opposites there, because I was going to kind of slot right in the middle and say exactly that. My answer would have been that there's two types of tone, isn't there? When we talk about tone, you're either talking about the tone that the player creates himself, which is a massive part of it, your touch, your technique when it comes to things like vibrato and pick attack. But then you've also got the tone that is coming directly from the gear. And I would say to you, Jamie, it depends on that particular artist or song, because it's always going to be a blend of technique and the gear that you use, but certain players are going to sway more towards one or the other. So you've got players who are very, very renowned for their technique. Look at someone like B.B. King. He's got his trill vibrato thing where everybody says you could hear one note and know it's BB. And so nailing that technique is probably going to be more important than going after his guitar and amp combination. But then you've also got guys who really have a signature sound, a signature set of equipment, that if you were to just if you were to play through their gear, that would probably make someone instantly go, hey, that sounds a bit like Edge. So it's always going to be a blend of the two, isn't it?
I've had this conversation with Yamaha so many times. When it comes to writing patches and writing presets for the show and things like that. We did a few years ago. We did some shows for PMT. The big music store chain. Yeah. And the idea was that using all the Yamaha gear, can we sound like the Guitar Heroes? Using all the Line 6 and Yamaha stuff. And we used to invite people after the first half to come and have a go on the gear, and one of the things that we always say is that, yes, we can get the tone, we can get the sound as accurately as we can get the delays as accurate as we can, the amplifiers and things like that. But, if you're going to go strum your way through a Hank Marvin patch, then you're going to sound nothing like Hank Marvin, are you? We can get you in the ballpark with tone, and then I think if you specifically want to sound like somebody, then the feel comes into it as well. So,
well, that leads nicely into what my other point was going to be, that I think there's a third component, and I think it's one that is huge. I would call it like vocabulary, phrases, because you can have the gear and you can have studied someone's technique, but if you're not going to play in a way that they would play, so we could take players like Chuck Berry or Angus Young, David Gilmour, they're all going to have like a set of very signature licks and vocabulary. So if they were playing over a particular song, I mean, coming back to the Stevie thing, obviously Stevie was so heavily influenced by guys like Albert King that you can hear an immediate lineage in their vocabulary. You can listen to any Stevie track and any Albert King track and kind of hear some licks that they've each put their own spin on. So it's also going to be that as well. I mean, Chuck Berry, for instance, doesn't necessarily have a signature tone, but I could think of a few licks that you could play instantly that would, not even such a technique thing, just like, here's a phrase that if I play it, you're going to go, that's Chuck. You know what I mean? So it's kind of those three things in combination.
And in order to learn those phrases, obviously you're going to have to, there's going to be a technique involved to it. And that's the point where I would go, okay, if I was learning a Steve Vai song, for instance, I would look at it and go and assess what's kind of required of me to be able to play that, try and understand it. But then I think the tone is important, and getting that. You couldn't approach Steve Vai with a bluesy sort of tone, could you? You need something that's kind of revved up and quite high gain.
I mean, guys like Clapton, for instance. Again, I'd say he probably falls more into the more emphasis on the vocab and the technique part of it than the tone, simply because he's had lots of different sounds. So if you wanted to dial in a Clapton sound, well, there's not one signature sound.
335, SG, Strat, it's Clapton.
Strat, you've got the 80s, you've got Clapton now with the tweed thing. But what you could do is, I can think of just a couple of licks. If someone said, play me some Clapton, there's like a couple of licks, a couple of phrases I would go to that would just make the listener go, huh. Couple that with a bit of his technique, which might be his vibrato or something. So it's never the same for any one player. If you're trying to learn a song, or you're trying to sort of nail someone's sound, it's going to be a blend of those things, I think. yeah. I hope that answers the question, Jamie. But thank you for sending it in. And if anybody else wants to get in touch, you can find us on Instagram. Just search for Phil Walker Guitar, Chris Anthony Guitar, and Lee Troy Guitar. If you want to find us on Facebook, you can go to Phil Walker Guitarist, Lee Williams Guitarist, and Chris Anthony Guitar. You can find the Story of Guitar Heroes on Instagram and Facebook. You've got the website www.storyofguitarheroes.com, and you can head over to YouTube and search Phil Walker Guitarist and see some videos from behind the scenes.
Ooh. Cool. Ooh, how exciting.
And he will have his trousers on in most of them.
And Chris, if it's cold, we'll have 2 on. Yes. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Keep it up. We'll be back next week. And Lee, Christopher, it's been a pleasure as usual zooming you.
It has.
Been a pleasure, chaps.
Zoom you
Until
next week.
Time.
Cheery, bye. Can't believe Chris is drinking green tea. What's wrong with him?